Warm welcome to each and every one of you. It is indeed a great privilege and an honor, and above all, a blessing to be sat in this chair on a weekly basis to engage in conversation with luminaries in our community. I was having a conversation with a barrister friend of mine, Matthew Ryder, maybe 20 years ago. And we were in my study at a house I used to live in. And I was discussing with him one of my great desires, which was to have or set up a platform by which I could interview and present illuminaries in my community to show our people and young people that we have great achievers. And for the most part, unfortunately, during that time, many of our great brothers and sisters who have grown up in our community and have gone on to do great things, at that time, there was no platform really for them to really come back and engage the community as much as they wanted to share their experience, their knowledge, their vision. There was no platform. And I had the thought in my head, to do something like this. And for 17 odd years, the thought sat there and was turning. But, when COVID came around, it allowed us to move away from meeting in person. And as a result of such, we started this online spiritual injection platform. And ever since we have been blessed to start this platform, we have spoken to now hundreds of our brothers and sisters and presented the best and the brightest to our community. And today typifies, that line of great achievers who we have been blessed to sit with. And brother reminded me, and I totally forgot. He said, I remember having coffee with you. And he'll explain it 20 years ago in a coffee shop. But, since that time, my brother has traveled, I would have thought, a good portion of the world, and now is based in our beloved Jamaica. And by God's grace, he has built a first-class hotel and resort, and really, enjoying that which we suffered for as a people. Because where our parents were brought into the Caribbean to be burden bearers of Europeans, now we're going back and owning that land which we once served, and are now, dedicating it to the uplift and the rejuvenation of not just our people, but those who desire rejuvenation, well-being, and upliftment. So it gives me pleasure, and it's indeed an honor to turn the floor and the microphone over to my dear brother, who is actually in Jamaica as we speak. So spiritual injection, please take your devices off of mute, those of you in the listening audience, and give a warm welcome to our special guest this evening, brother Errol Hewitt. Let's give him a big round of applause. Warm welcome, brother.
Thank you, brother Hewitt. Greetings. Welcome to Spiritual Injection.
From Jam Down.
Blessings.
First of all, thank you very much for having me. And first of all, just got to give thanks and praise that I was woken up this morning. It's a gift. It's a blessing. That's the biggest blessing you can have.
Yes.
Once I get that, then everything else has already been laid out. Like, I've just got to work and get it. I don't know where to start. Such a long introduction. I hope I can live up to it in some ways.
And beyond.
I'll do my best. I am 60 years of age. And the reason I mention that is that those of us who are of that decade in birth will realize that growing up in our teens, the hobby of choice for most young Black men was electronics.
Yes.
Electronics. There is no faking it.
Yeah.
There is no getting your friend. It's either you read the magazine, can understand the drawing, and create. And so when we created, sometimes I don't even know where much of that inspiration or indeed creativity comes from. I just know it's something that I did. At the time, we would also, the only thing a sound system would have, they'd buy was a record player, a turntable. Everything else was made.
That's
The
right,
speaker,
brother.
the amplifier, the preamp,
That's
the
right.
mixer, the sound effects. Now,
The
and a lot of,
speakers, don't forget the speakers.
and the speakers, yes, speakers. And in my conversation, I'll digress. And so please bring me back to where I was, because I'll digress and then I'll digress within that digression. So a quick digression now is that if you come now and look at what our young people are doing in terms of hobbies and interests, I hope, I would love to be corrected and pointed in the direction of the same level of creativity, freedom of expression through design and electronics. But we'll come back to that. But at the time when he did all these things, you had the big Sonys, the JVC, the Hitachi, all those companies. So I studied electronic, but when I left, the idea of going to work for those people never entered my imagination. That's because we, in many ways, going to school, and I went to school in Hackney, in Brook House, anyone who knows Hackney, in the center of what then became the Murder Mile. We were just a feeder for the factories. So the idea that I could study, design, and go and work for Sony never entered my consciousness, because that wasn't taught to me. It was not taught to me. In actual fact, my best subjects in school was technical drawing, maths, English, commerce, woodwork, I think, and a couple of others, but those are the main ones I remember. And even then with art. So the art, the architecture, and even the maths. Those are the ingredients of an architect. But no one told me in school that I could be an architect.
Correct.
I only subsequently learned that as an adult, talking to people, and people ask me, why am I not an architect? But anyway, I'm going on about that, but we'll leave that one alone. So from sound system, I then, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, and this probably explains a lot. When I was 2 years of age, my mother she had my younger brother soon after me. I'm one of a twin. So then she had some women's issue and she could not cope. And so we were placed in care. And she felt guilty. And then she took us and sent us to Jamaica. So at 2 years of age, I came to Jamaica. And when I came back to England when I was 12, I was a little bit angry, because when I went into school and I realized what I'd missed out, I was like really, really angry. Not just really angry. I didn't act out, but I knew what I'd missed. At least I thought I knew what I missed. Or more to the point, I did not realize what I'd gained from being in an environment where you see people like myself as the school teacher, as doctor, as the nurse, as the prime minister, as the head of state. It just didn't enter my conscience, to even question it. It's just a given. Whilst I was here, I actually did something. Looking back on it now, there was a kid, a mixed race kid, came out, and he had this Ladybird book called How to Build a Radio, a Crystal Radio. It was a Ladybird. And I remember being fascinated by it. And so we took this book, read this book, decided I'm going to build this radio. I drew the circuit diagram of the radio on a piece of board, and then drove nails at the junctions, used my lunch money to go downtown and buy electronic components, and tried to make this radio. I was unsuccessful, but that then sparked my interest in electronics. So of course, when I came back to England now, and when I saw just a physics class and it had all this equipment, I saw a chemistry class and it had Bunsen burners and test tubes. That's the angle. I was happy, but I thought, God, I've missed out on so much. But I think that in balance, I gained far more than I missed out on. And so that led me into electronics, and then I had an interest in television. I remember seeing a picture of what's called an outside vehicle, an OB truck, and it had all these banks of screens, and they were looking at it, and the guys were just looking at it. And I thought, wow. So I went to college, did electronics, the old ONC, that's the one just below HNC. And then I applied for jobs, and it just so happens, I don't even remember applying for this job, but it was a job in what's called a facilities house. They're the ones who supply services to the broadcast industry. And that's how I got into television. I joined as maintenance, but then I wasn't happy with just fixing stuff. I wanted to operate stuff, to operate the cameras, I want to operate the video recorders. In those days, the video recorders were the size of a wardrobe, so reel to reels.
Yeah.
And then I left there, and then I met this guy, and he said, "Well, why aren't you applying to TV companies?" Again, I hadn't crossed my radar, so I wrote a letter to TVAM. They invited me for an interview, and I got a job working there. And that started my, if you like, my broadcasting career. And so I did that, and there was a massive strike. And if anyone knows, old enough to remember the TVM strike, we were all standing outside. And I remember Margaret Thatcher coming up there and asking, "Why are there so many people here?" And what happened was also technology had come to bear, but the union, in its intransigence, was still talking about, "Oh, we must decide manning levels." Well, you can have a conversation about manning levels, but if technology is changing, hard as technology has changed right now, in much the same way that being able to stream music has killed the business model of the record industry. Killed. The same thing had happened and started in television. And so eventually they sacked all the technicians, got a small amount of money. But what I learned from that was that there's no such thing as a job for life. And also I remember being at one of these union meetings, and the unions were saying, "Oh, yes, you must stand up for the union." I remember one guy got up and said, "I'm really sorry, but I disagree with what we're fighting for." And everybody tried to bully him down. But I remember being totally surprised and inspired by this man who got up and, in other words, got up in front of the machine and says, "No." So that I found inspiring. So I then took that to heart. So lots of other things comes around. But basically what I took from that is, no, people say, "No, you can't do this." No, I can't. Or you go up there and there's the glass ceiling. Well, I'm going to find a way to jump over that glass ceiling. Yeah. I might not smash it, but I'm going to go around the back. I'm going to go to the side. I'm going to creep. Whatever it is, I'm going to get there. And so after TVM, I was about 21. I then became a freelance cameraman, editor. So now I worked for various companies. One of them was this big, huge agency called Worldwide Television News, now called AP. So if you watch the news, in the top left-hand corner, you'll see letters AP, Associated Press. Even though it's on ITV or BBC or whatever, they tend to be the first one to the news. So as a result of that, I then got sent around the world. So up until which war? Not the Ukraine war. Up until the last big war, I was at, every war filming. Somalia, Black Hawk Down, I was there. Chechen War, rebels, I was there. Pakistan, I was there. Name the Berlin Wall, my first job when the wall came down, I was there, walking through, not even understand the significance of these world events. But just amazing. In fact, at the Berlin Wall, it's the first time I heard a banana joke that wasn't directed at me. It was directed at the East Germans. As soon as they crossed the border, the first thing they went was bananas to eat. So I did that, and at one point, my travels also took me to Mecca. where I went and filmed Hajj. I was about 75 meters away from a thing called the Kaaba. In fact, it was quite interesting going to Mecca because I'm not a Muslim, but I tell you what, you see these prayers 5 times a day, there's something in it. Even if your employer work you to the bone, fight hard, call a prayer, you have to stop, you get a break. So I'd go marching into the mosque, no idea what they said, but I just closed my eyes and dropped my head and allowed my mind to be free. And I came out rejuvenated and ready to do my filming. Does that? So did that pretty much for a number of years. But then I started to reconnect to Jamaica a bit as I got older and start to sort of think more about who I am, you know. But coming back again to freelancing, the freelancing, because you're freelance, so you don't sure when you're going to get your next pay. So there is no certainty, no, one could even argue stability, really. But what it meant was when you do, so it's almost like feast and famine. So when there's a feast, you don't eat everything. You start putting something away for the famine.
Right.
And then I started putting something away, and then a guy I worked with, and he asked me if I had an executive pension. I said, no, you must get an executive pension. So I started putting money into this executive pension. And please remind me of it because I cashed it in recently. And then there's a German girl I know. Now, her name is Von something or the other. And the Von something or the other I learned later meant that she was from the old German aristocracy. So then she said to me, Errol, what are you doing putting your money? Can't you say it's a scam? Like, scam? What do you mean by a scam? I'm putting money aside for my pension. She goes, yeah, but it's still a scam. Why do you think in the city they're all wearing Armani suits and driving around in Ferraris? Because they take their fees at the top. They're taking your money. So I'm like, well, what else can I do? She said to me, why don't you put your money in property? Invest in property, you make money that way. Another angel, in my opinion. And throughout my life, I've had these little angels come in various form, various races to say, no, do this, do that. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Force me to look at myself and ask questions of myself. So I then announced to a friend of mine, oh, I'm going to buy a house. Because at that point, I had a small flat. I'm going to buy a house. Then a friend of mine said, oh, there's a woman next door selling her house. When I spoke to the woman, reading the price, this house is on Sandringham Road. If anyone knows Hackney, Sandringham Road was the center of the drug sale. I grew up around all of that. Just grew up around that, otherwise known as the front line. So I got this house, but then the woman said to me, young man, you might find this useful. She gave me a folder. In this folder was planning permission for 3 apartments. I rang the council up. The council said, oh, that job has been discharged. They apologized to me for not changing the street numbers from the number to the number A, B, and C. So again, another angel.
Mm.
So at the time now, got this house. I am paying a mortgage for it. I'm freelancing, running around the world. As soon as I got some money, I would pay the mortgage. I would take time off and do the building work, trying to finish the conversion. It took me 5 years to convert that house into 3 flats and pay the mortgage at the same time. Completed that. And then I managed to remortgage the house, by which point property prices has gone up. So what I paid for the house, I was able to put that on the cheapest flat in that building. And then I remortgaged the other 2 and used that money as deposits for other properties and just repeat the process. And you fast forward 20 years, I find myself with a small portfolio and in a very blessed position. This is all blessings, by the way. This is all blessings. Various people have been sent to me. Various things happened to me. And I could have gone left. As I said, I grew up around Sandringham Road. I grew up seeing guys that I knew grew up with selling drugs on the street. The Sandringham Road drugs problem got so bad and so established. I can only tell you what I witnessed. I witnessed Stockton police turning up there, locking off the road so the drugs dealers can have a sports day running up and down the streets.
Wow.
That's how established it was. I also went to a meeting where I saw the same police station giving what I can only describe as career and investment advice to said black men. And what they were telling them was that, look, the Class A stuff is coming into the area. Don't let people come along. In other words, they were asking the black men to do the work for them. Don't let these ones, the guys are coming in from Harlesden and Brixton, gonna come and start selling Class A stuff. Don't let them in. Then the guy turned and said, but look, all these houses here, why don't you guys buy one of these houses here and do it up? Yeah. When looking back on it now, I was shocked. The idea that the police are telling them that they should use their ill-gotten gain to buy a house. Good advice.
Good advice.
Sadly, good advice falling on deaf ears. I don't know. And brother Hillary, please correct me if I go too far. If you think I'm being disrespectful, please.
No, you're fine.
But basically, it's what in the Bible they talk about pearl before swine. And the pearl is good advice, and the swine, sadly, is our people. I was going to say black man, but I'm black. So when I say these things, I'm actually talking about myself. So I take no pride in what I'm saying. I take I tell them I'm better than them because they are me. I am them. So when I talk, I'm actually also about them. I'm also talking about the condition of my people. So we had that, and within that environment, I was at college. In fact, one person once said to me, why are you going to college, Errol? You're only going to come out and can't find work. They were kind of partially right, but the trouble with that particular position is that then you never ever grow as a person. Part of going to college is not just about getting come out with a skill or a degree so you can get a job. Part of it is, and I've heard Jermaine Gray said this, personal development. How do you improve as a person? How do you improve your language? How do you improve your thinking? We think in words. How are you going to read difficult text if your vocabulary is limited? So amidst those conditions, I somehow managed to, and the bizarre thing about it is that I was never ever tempted. Never ever tempted. Never tempted. Again, I can't tell you why. But so I started in this property business just as a way to secure my future, so to speak. Again, and bizarre, even before that, when I went freelance and I started to earn good money, and I lived at home. So before the house, I'd actually bought a flat. I mentioned the flat earlier. But I bought the flat and I moved out of the council house. So I've never, thank the Lord, never rented. And nothing against those who rent. I'd say that just as an indication of my particular blessings. As I keep coming back to it. Because that's what it is, to me anyway, my blessing. So because I didn't rent it, it meant that that money that I would have given to a landlord ended up in an investment that not just benefits me, but gives me options in life, give me my family options in life, give my wife options in life, my children options in life. So now I don't have to, so I can come out of the culture of struggle from which I came. So bought this flat, but even before I bought the flat, I was earning in a day what my father earned in a week. And I'm in the house and I can't tell him because I know what would happen. Any conversation would have, oh, because you have money, no, but that's what happened. it would never be well done, son. It would never be that. But strangely enough, I've learned since I've been here, because my father's gone, where I bought this hotel. We made this hotel, the land. And my father's family is up and down the street. And whenever I meet people, oh, Lionel, journalist son, he referred to me, oh, Mr. Lionel's journalist son. So I knew, sorry. A moment.
Of course, take your time, brother.
So I knew he was proud of me. Very proud of me. Even though he never said it. Sorry.
That's all right.
No. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Okay. Nothing to be sorry about, brother. It's a joyful time.
But I love it around here where I am because, again, loads of family, cousins up and down the road, and they come to see me. And what's amazing, and I'll come back to this, as I said, my chronology will be all over the place. One of the most satisfying experience I have is when I meet distance. We're talking cousin, and the little ones come along. And then they say, are you the real owner? I'm saying, yeah, it's a family. I said, you also own this. And it goes, but how? I said, oh, I got an education and I worked, and then I'm thinking it's education. Then they turn and say to me, but you're not white.
Say it the exact way they said it.
To say that.
Errol, I want you to say it the way they said it.
They say to me, but you're not white. And then I said, well, not all. No, it doesn't have to be all. And then I took a quick survey and I realized that 99% of all the waterfront properties are owned by white people.
Of course.
Yeah. So in some ways I understood where they were coming from. Because sometimes, when race matters, how we deal with stuff, how we see stuff, certainly brought up in England, you try to articulate those ideas here, it's a completely different thing. It doesn't quite work. It doesn't travel. In Jamaica, a kind of like a racism and colorism masquerades for class. The two are one and the same.
Yeah.
Two are one and the same.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's one experience. But if I go back to my TV days, I mean, I remember going into Russia, go to Moscow, flew to Moscow. Lots of stories, but one of the good ones, the reason I'm mentioning is that it's a kid's story. In fact, actually, there wasn't a kid. It didn't start off as a kid's story. It started off as I went to a market. What do I hear? I hear Jamaican music. I'm saying Jamaican music for a reason. I won't say what genre. So I followed the music, by which point kids started following me. And they're looking at me. They pull up my pants. I dropped down when I had hair, so they have to feel my hair and touch my skin. And then I got to this market and I saw this guy selling CDs, all black CDs, Jamaican music. The man saw me and then straight away, ting-a-ling-a-ling.
Don't tell me Shabba was in.
Shabba. I hear me to him now. Oh, I said to him, you speak English. And he burst out into Russian. Didn't know a single word of English.
Wow.
That's an example of the Jamaican brand.
Right. Right.
In Somalia, Black Hawk Down, dragging the American body through the street. Went there to film it. We locked up in this compound. had to have security everywhere. When I say security, when you go out, even if it's two of us, it'd be me in a van and in the back of the van, there'd be a guy with a machine gun at the front, one guy, two either side of him with another two machine gun, and two at the back. So basically 4 guys with a gun. That's on my vehicle. And then a vehicle in front and a vehicle behind. So then we'd come back in and they're looking at me. And so I went over to talk to them. Black men. Who are you? They said. I said, I'm black like you. No, 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 no. So I said to my wife, no. I said, I'm black like, no, 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 no. I said, oh, I'm from England. But who are you? When I said Jamaica, oh my God. It's really weird because the brand Jamaica is so underperforming. A lot of frustrations that I get whenever I talk because I'm sometimes talking and getting into borderline politics, which in Jamaica can be problematic. People lose their lives.
Yes.
But the brand Jamaica is just an amplification of basically the brand Africa.
Right.
Yeah. And who's benefiting from it. And it's there. And, you know, so although I see these things and they're interesting, it kind of opened my eyes to the larger implications of who we are, where we are. Yeah. But coming back, so I said, I'll always have these little stories to tell. So the brand Jamaica again opened doors. Got treated well. They were like, oh, Bob Marley, and yeah, everything was good. So I came back here to Jamaica and I attended a funeral, cousin of an uncle of mine, and I landed on when is it the 10th or the 12th, and then the whole world closed down the following day in COVID, and then I used the time to start working on the house. So we had to raise was a small cottage there before, a small guest house. It was falling to pieces. Basically, they built it with sea sand. So the sand that came from the sea, someone's selling basically what Jamaicans call bandulu sand. So of course, with the salt, at some point, the salt and the steel and the cement will oxidize. The steel will pop, will expand. Concrete will break, and eventually the whole thing will ultimately collapse. So I had to raise the whole thing to the ground and start it again. I managed to had a Jamaican artist I know, but she was also an architect. So she came to the site, spent a couple of days, looked around, see the view of the sea, see where the sun rose and set. And then she was able to come up with an amazing design for me. I like the idea of a sunflower. We have the middle bit, which is a bar, and then you have either side of that bar, you had you had a middle bit. So imagine this. Yeah, like that. That's the sunflower. These are the petals. So the bar is here. And if you cut out the middle, you end up with just buildings around the edge there. Then I thought I'd have lines coming to the bar. So when people order their drinks, they can just send the drinks up and down. Okay. That didn't quite work, but the basic design of it was the same. So it has a slight sunflowery feel. Right. And then I'd been to Greece and I like this Santorini. I like this
very nice
water. So I made the building out just blue with white trimmings. So that works quite well. And so the grill is quite where it is quite amazing. As I was on this morning show on Jamaica TV, and I mentioned that the sunshine here it's so spectacular. It's a national treasure, a national treasure most Jamaicans sadly will never see. I mean, even me being here has raised certain sort of moral, cultural questions that I struggle with. One of them is this: as more and more of the ocean side is in private hands, and catering to paid visitors, then where does that leave the locals who can't afford to come in? Are they now barred from something that belongs to them? But at the same time, I have to marry that up with running a business. One of the dilemmas I faced was the parish council came along and said my wall was too high, even though it was shorter than the white people next door. We'll come back to that. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, what's wrong with this high? They said it's high because no one can look over. So I said, so you mean you can't see the sea? It goes, yes. So what I did in the end, I cut out some holes. And I remember the sunflower. And I cut out some holes in the wall, big holes they can look through, and just put sort of like burglar bars in, so you can't to mitigate that security risk. So there's a bar there, but you can still look through and see the sea. Parish council came back and said the wall is too high. And I said yes, but I thought the idea was that no one can see. They goes, yes. Well, can you see? They goes, yes, but I said, what? What? And they went away. They never came back. What that did for me, though, was enabled it's a halfway house, at least the local people, when they walk by, because the hotel is in a road called the West End. The West End is the cliffside, and we're about 5-7 minutes maximum drive to the beach. So our side is even more exclusive because you can't, unless you come by boat, you can't exactly walk from one side of the cliff to the other. You have to come in through quote unquote private land. But at least this, I said to myself, well, they might not be able to access it because they're running a business unless they're going to come in and pay, because I've had to spend money to build this. At least they can see. So that sort of, and it's this kind of cultural kind of compromise that I'm facing. And that's because in many ways, I'm not a real businessman. In some ways, my dad would say, I'm just trying a little thing. Mm-hmm. Although one has to balance up the whole idea of trying a little thing with the blessing that you have, because I can't really reduce it to a thing. If I reduce it to a thing, it means I'm being ungrateful. And Brother Hilly will tell you what being ungrateful is. It's a kind of sin.
It is.
You've got to be thankful. So there's this dilemma that I face in terms of balancing up thankfulness and show off. Mm-hmm. Where does self-promotion and balancing business get to show off? Mm-hmm. And if you come down, where does it get to be just thankful? Mm-hmm. And also being seen as the face of this is something I struggle with, because with property, I don't know, you can own 10, 20 properties, no one will ever know. Mm-hmm. In fact, in England, when I go to look at a property or go to repairs, I see people that I know, and they just assume that I'm there working, and they ask me, what are you doing here? And I don't lie, I just say, listen, I'm looking after this property. Yeah, I don't say I own it, but it's not the complete truth. But I didn't want to say I own it, because then sometimes we self-regulate ourselves needlessly, and I'm no exception. So the hotel now, I can't do that. I am me and my wife, we are the face of it. So the TV appearance I did, I had to turn up as myself. I couldn't hide behind anything. But, you still try and, for me anyway, adapt a certain humbleness, and so it's find that balance between understanding where you are, understand the cultural implications of who I am, understanding the responsibility of a little power. Yeah, a little power. Because one of the things I love here is that we employ a total of 14 people. Now, the idea that my parents came to England, my dad rented rooms. And then within one generation, I'm able now to get in that same position where I'm renting the room. And now, I didn't go further. Now I'm employing about 14 people. That's 14 families relying on my efforts. Mm-hmm. I On the one, sometimes I think it's daunting, but on the other side, I was thinking, wow, does God think that highly of me? Where he can say, look, here, look after these 14 souls, look after these 14 families with their children. You now have a duty of care. When I employ people, I tell them that when you come on site, it's not just about you coming and working, getting your wages and clear off. I also have a duty of care. You spend the lion's share of your God-given time with me, with the hotel. So I do have a care. So in some ways, that's some of the things that I try to bring into how we operate. But at the same time, you can only do a lot of that if you run your business properly. Then the business achieve a certain amount of success, and with that success, you can then use that success to do things, which then goes in this idea. Mom always say to me that, you know, the sun don't just shine out of your bottom. You're not bigger than the sun. And so be humble. You get your stuff, realize how you get it, understand the value of a pound.
You sure, sister, but
I was trying to yeah.
Remember the Jamaican brand.
Again, I can talk, so I hope I'm not dominating the space and the time.
No, and what's interesting, Errol, is there are those in the chat saying, I could listen to him all day. Well, for those in the chat, we don't have all day.
Anyway, just to stop up, Begona Cliff Hotel, you guys can come along. And believe me, I'm trying to work out what a promotion code. You come to the hotel and I'll give you a 30% discount. Just mention this show.
There you go. Take your devices off of mute and give yourself a big round of applause. Let me hear you for the promotion.
So just use the name of the show. That's a promotion.
Yeah, and the grill.
30%.
Oh, thank you,
And
brother.
also,
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
just remember
Thank you,
this.
See the
thank you.
blessings you get when you tune
Thank
into
you.
spiritual
Wonderful
injection.
gesture. Thank you, sir.
And just remember this. When you come and stay with us, your money comes into a Black-owned, Black-operated business who employs Black people first.
Go ahead.
We tend to use Black suppliers first.
That's right.
So the money will then start to circulate amongst us a little bit longer before it leaves. But if more and more of us start doing that, then you have the money then more and more money will circulate amongst us. Nothing wrong with others, they're just doing their business because I want to take their money as well. Let's not beat about the book. But it'd be nice if the money circulate amongst ourselves for longer.
Fantastic. Let's give Brother Errol a big round of applause.
Go on, Brother Errol.
He's laying the foundation.
Thank you, brother.
Great
Thank
example,
you so much
brother
for your
Errol.
generosity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Errol. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing
your
journey,
coming over. That's amazing.
See you soon. Inshallah.
So you'll be inundated, Brother Errol. And
sorry, I forgot to mention. The hotel, you find us online. So it's Begona Cliff, Begona cliffhotel.com. Book through the website, and that's where the 30% will be.
Fantastic. And we're going to put that in the chat also.
Yes, please do.
So tell us more about the hotel. Like, how many rooms do you have there?
20 rooms.
20 rooms.
20 rooms. There's a pool, there's a bar, there's a grill, there's an event space. So one of the things we're kind of marketing at now is, imagine you're having a 40th. Imagine Brother Hewitt.
More than that, Errol. A bit more than that.
You're having a 40th celebration. So you and your mates could turn up and just take over the place.
Wow.
And set up your box, have your sound system, play, dance, and whatever else you do at 40 to celebrate.
Sounds like a plan.
So we do weddings, events, reunions.
Fantastic. So tell me this: your inspiration for deciding to build, a hotel, a resort, what was the due diligence like? What made you decide not to just build a home, you know, and maybe cultivate the rest of the land for something else? What made you decide to build a hotel? Because obviously that's hard work, and it's going to take you being on the ground to achieve that. You can't really build that, manage it from the UK. So tell us about that decision-making process.
One of the features now that I've come to realize about my life is the what I call these angels that appear. So you're right, in some ways we saw it and we thought, oh, we could build a nice house there, maybe just a couple of rooms, Airbnb. The architect that I knew, her partner says, no, Errol, no. You can get a hotel here. I'm like, what? Yes, you can get a hotel. So, you know, it wasn't for me, no, eureka, and I thought, strategic, and I must, no. The thing about me is that when I hear stuff, then that triggers other stuff. So when I hear hotel, I suddenly thought, wow, I'd never again. I'm from a culture of struggle. We are not bred to think that we can build, much less own a hotel.
Right, right.
We're not. It's simply not.
Right.
So we hear someone talks again about this thing about where you have 90% of the people are the same, and it's 5% who has the knowledge. And
well, 10% who have the knowledge and who run the world, and 5% are trying to positively affect the 85% to inform them about the 10% who run the world.
Thank you. So for me, one of the things I've learned, I realized that sometimes I listen to my friends, but then I realize that occasionally I'll hear from these smaller percentage. And when I hear, my ears get cocked like a meerkat. And I listen and I'm like, And then for me, it's like dots. All of a sudden, I start joining the dots together. Oh, okay. And then I'll jump on Mr. Excel, because Excel is your friend, everybody. Excel is your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Spreadsheet is your friend.
Mm-hmm.
You can just look at things and do mathematical model for most things, and you can see. And then, I mean, at the peak of it all, I was in the middle of the pandemic, and I was doing a Zoom call to my mortgage people in England and arranging a remortgage from Jamaica. They had no idea I was in Jamaica. And for example, there's all sorts of stuff now that we can use, all sorts of opportunities. So for example, there's a company called Vonage, and you sign up the Vonage, you get what looks like an 0207 number, but then you can take that with you anywhere, and your phone will ring anywhere in the world, as long as you have an internet connection. So I did that. They're coming back on that, thinking they're calling me in London, and the back is blurred out. I'm just saying, hello, hold up my passport. This is who I am. So remember I talked earlier about every loophole, every distance you could leave, there's always opportunities.
Yes.
So
very good.
So and then you meet people, and it's about, we talked earlier about being in a position to receive blessings. Yeah.
And tell me, how long have you been open? How long had your doors been open, and how long did it take to construct from ownership, receiving the keys to the land and breaking ground?
It took me 3 years.
3 years to build out the hotel and to open up for your first.
Actually, no, how long was COVID?
About that, good 2 to 3 years. Yeah, it was about that.
So from being here, from lockdown, and we started receiving guests from during that time.
And that was a great time to have a hotel in the Caribbean, wasn't it?
It was a great term to find workmen, because there wasn't much work around. So there's a point where I become the only going concern, and there's loads of people, hotel workers, good people who turn up at the door knocking, looking for work. So in terms of, again, being able to take resources from England, I was going to use the what I call the R word, but by R I mean reparation.
Right.
But I think I do a disservice when I use the R word. But ultimately, I was taking stuff from here, from England, resources from England that I'd worked for, and transferring it to Jamaica.
So tell me, how important, and this is connected to another question, how important do you think it is for those of us who are the descendants of the Caribbean primarily, and those of us who are the descendants of Africa, how important is it now for us to have something in the Caribbean, in Africa, as an alternative to just having one egg in one basket here in the UK?
If anybody of Afro-Caribbean descent want to get the sense of being able to do anything unbridled, just a sense of being able to think it and do it, come to Africa, come to the Caribbean. Despite all the struggles and some problems, but just the sense that I can. That's what I found here. And in fact, since I've been here, hardly a day goes by without me seeing some kind of opportunity, but I'm just one man.
So would you say then, Errol, that there is too much negative chat about going home and going to the Caribbean, and a lot of people have been dissuaded by the negative chat? Do you think the negative chat is overwhelming and is unfounded?
It is. In essence, it's the same negative chat. When you think of Windrush, you don't think anything positive. We think of the people who got deported. We don't think of you, Brother Hillary. We don't think that you're a product of Windrush.
Hillary was, and the minister gave me the name Hakeem. but when I think about my parents, Brother Errol, my parents, they've been in London for such a long time. Their vibe is, oh, Jamaica too hot. So how many of us are really now conditioned in that same kind of way where we just get used to the change in the
well, in the words of Public Enemy, don't believe the hype.
Right.
So
categorically, for spiritual injection, your vibe is
spiritual injection. Yeah. For spiritual injection, I was going to say a sense of belonging. When I come out, and also the level of respect that I get. Morning, Mr. Hewitt. Sir, in England, doesn't matter what I do sometimes. You walk around the place and you're just feces under someone's shoes. Yeah? Here, the level of respect, my God, don't get me wrong. A friend of mine, his father's St. Lucian, he says, know thyself and do thyself no harm. It is so important that we understand who we are. It's so important that we understand blessings. So, for example, I'm here now in Jamaica. There's some areas with some strong social issues, largely from a historic perspective of underdevelopment and just downright, describe it now, just spoilers. I can go into the Jamaica thing, but I'll just say this. Sadly for Jamaica, one of its leaders decided that Cuba is next to us and Cuba is our neighbor. Why should we not be friends with him? And then as a result of that proximity and his friendship assertion, the United States basically destabilized Jamaica.
Yeah.
Through flooding the country with guns.
Yeah.
And once you open the Pandora's back of gun possession, there is no going back.
Yeah.
And Jamaica is still trying to come to terms with that. I would even go further than that and argue that even in the 80s, when in England, when the police feared outbreak of crack cocaine, where Metropolitan Police went and recruited yardies from Jamaica.
That's
Two of my
right.
cousins are one of them. And they came to England and brought their culture with them, gun culture, which ultimately, because I said, when I grew up around Sandringham Road, the idea of one weed man robbing another weed man was unheard of.
Right.
The idea of you holding up a man, no, I didn't hear of that.
That's right.
As soon as these cousins of mine turn up and others, that started.
Mm.
One of the things they would do was they'd hold up a dance.
Mm.
Everybody had to put their belongings in a plastic bag.
That's
All
right.
that kind of stuff.
That's right.
They'd meet rivals and then throw them over the wall and all this kind of stuff.
That's right.
So as a result of that, even the violence that we have in England today amongst our young people and the so-called gangs, you can trace its roots right back to this little island, Jamaica.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Right. But amidst all that, I realized that although I'm from a culture of struggle, the Lord has made it so I no longer have to struggle. So why should I pretend to struggle? If I pretend to struggle, it means I'm being ungrateful.
Yes.
Therefore, it means that I go and live amongst like-minded people. I go live in a gated community. Yes, I will have contact with people of struggle, but I can't pretend to be like them and live amongst them. Otherwise, I become a big opportunity. And just a matter of time before I'm robbed or held up or what have you.
So therein lies the solution, right? Is too many try to act in a manner in which they are not accustomed, hence causing a problem and then spreading that problem and it becoming, global news. So the way how you framed that answer was very wise. And I hope everybody picked that up in the audience, because many of us do get ourselves in trouble because we think we are one of the boys.
Yes.
It's exalted you to be maybe a teacher, a guide for the boys, but you want to be one of the boys. So that's a very good, good.
And there's a spiritual side to it. Well, you know what, as I said, I've been given this gift from God.
Yes.
God put me in a place in life where certainly for the time being, I no longer have to struggle. Why would I now want to go and act like a struggler?
And it's deceptive too.
Yeah.
It's deceitful. So tell me this, Errol, 2025, because our time is running. So in 2025, our program, we're going to kick off in January, a program to try to encourage at least 500 individuals in 2025 to acquire their dual citizenship and have that second passport, whether it's a Caribbean, CARICOM passport, which gives us access into Ghana, by the way.
Absolutely.
But how important do you think that is, as we're going to start that program in January in partnership with one of Jamaica?
So, for example, I now have dual citizenship. I took my father's birth certificate, or my father's, because I had it. It took me, the longest bit was just standing in line. It took me, I don't know, a couple of weeks.
And you did it there in Jamaica?
Flying. Yep. I had my birth certificate couriered over, and then I presented that and my father's, and they accepted that so you apply to become a citizen, and then upon obtaining your citizenship, you can then also apply for a passport.
But tell me this, because you own that piece of property, you would have been entitled to a golden visa anyway, right?
Maybe so. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, you would have been.
I didn't go for that.
Yeah, you would have been, just by virtue of purchasing that piece of land. You would have been given that passport. So by way of having that kind of access, and not having to stand up in the visitor queue when you arrive, it literally shaves off 2 hours.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So my co-host here, she's chomping at the bit because she has so many questions she would like to ask you, and I'm doing her a disservice. So, Sister Sylvina.
Thank you for what you shared. Thank you, Brother Abdul Hakim. I was wondering, Brother Errol, what in this journey at some point you joined forces with your wife. I don't want to say her name in case the internet is telling me the wrong.
Yvonne. Her name is Yvonne.
Yvonne, okay, so it is Yvonne, okay. So at some point, you joined forces with Yvonne. I wanted to know, not necessarily going back into your business, but currently, at least maybe the last 5 years, What role has she played, and is Yvonne now exploring her own kind of ventures, or is she helping you to build out, or you helping each other to build out what and where next? You've got this now. Where next?
Okay. First and foremost, me and my wife were a team.
Right.
It's easy for me to say without my wife, I couldn't have done it.
Mhm.
But that's not the issue. The issue is that she's been right here beside me, contributing spiritually, socially, financially.
Mhm.
So it's not just my resources, both our resources going into the pot.
Mhm.
She now does all the she's involved heavily in the running of it, and the marketing, the organization. Yeah. So although I'm here, we have an English manager, similar to myself in that parents are from Jamaica. She's decided to come home, so she comes and works and as our manager, and she reports to my wife.
Another blessing.
So my wife, yeah, she comes from she's a South London girl.
Wow.
I'm happy, man. South London. Anyway, we're all of our crosses to bear. Anyway, but our paths have not that been dissimilar. She had some properties. She trained as a journalist.
Okay.
Like worked in PR for a little bit, then left and started working for charities and using her skills to train people to wean them off that social disaster. And people, I hope they get stick from this social disaster called the dole.
Okay.
Been a total disaster for our people.
Yeah.
Total disaster.
Yeah.
We live in England now long enough. I'm sure he knows I'm going to get a little bit dark now. Most of us been here long enough now. We should own at least 2 homes, our own plus 1 investment.
Yes.
There was a time when they were giving away mortgages. Yeah. When I see us arguing, oh, these foreigners, East European coming to take our jobs, I'm like, well, they should be our brother.
Right.
Hakeem, please don't. If I use bad words, please just stop.
We'll beep them out on the replay,
they
brother.
should be our BIT.
Oh, you say you're God.
That's what they should be. We should be hiring them. They should be our
people.
Our slaves.
So your wife Iranian.
They should be our slaves, right? And so to see us now competing with these people.
Yeah.
Competing.
Do you remember, Errol, when they first came to the UK and we used to give them laboring jobs?
Yes.
And we used to pay them £25 a day. They would work for anything that we would give them. You remember?
Yep.
So now, do you remember what is the place? Acre Lane Timber Yard, where you get materials. Acre Lane Timber Yard now, brother, is run by Eastern Europeans. In order to order materials, you got to go to the desk. In order to get transportation, you got to go to a Polish person. So they run that whole place, right? And
they weren't given it. They weren't given it.
No, and
on top of that, they weren't given it. And B, they're white.
Yeah.
And because they're white. No, the English weren't giving them. They saw them as foreigners and terrible people.
That's right.
To run them out.
Right. But the interesting thing about them, they were willing to work hard. And the interesting thing about them was whenever there was a vacancy, they would always have a cousin or a brother or a friend who they would bring to work with them. Correct. And they played the smart game and the long game, where they went in the door being willing to take anything. Yep. And once they were in the door, they never left. And now they've taken over the buildings.
And,
So it's a
and
very
now,
smart game that
it's
they've.
not even with them. Now we now are jumping up and down, which is a bit I don't understand.
No,
Why are we competing with these people?
yeah, it's ridiculous. And
So,
sometimes,
I don't
Errol,
understand.
I think
It just shows you where
sometimes,
we are. It's
yeah,
where we are.
sometimes I think we overstay our welcome. And because we're supposed to extract what we need and then move on, sometimes, you know, like when you go to the party, you came early and now at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're still there at the corner.
Yeah,
You're supposed,
I elaborate more when you say we overstay our welcome.
meaning that there is a time frame for all things. Okay. The length of time is supposed to take you to put yourself, for instance, you worked and you had resources, and how you invested those funds were critical to this period of your life. So had you not made those decisions at that time, you literally could have been at this stage in your life without any assets.
Correct.
But the mere fact that you invested wisely and you have assets, then you could draw on those assets and leverage them, you know, and open up opportunities for yourself where you are. But without the asset, you would not have been able to extract funds out of that asset and leverage them against this land that you bought in the Caribbean. So what I mean, overstaying our welcome, if you didn't put yourself in that position, you would not have been able to put the money in the Caribbean and actually stay there to oversee the build. Because you have income coming in via the rental properties, it gives you that freedom to be where you are so you can enjoy, oversee the build. Because one of the stories that we always hear is, you know, when you're sending money to the Caribbean, and if you're not there, they'll send you pictures of somebody else's house being built. And by the time you
pictures of the house, except that it's not your house, it's their house.
It's not your house, right? You know, so the mere fact that you could oversee your build and become familiar with the builders and evolve it stage by stage is as a result of you executing your duty in due season so that you could benefit from it at a later time. That's what I mean by overstaying our welcome, you know. And similarly with our parents only came to England, as you know.
5 years.
They only came to extract some money and actually go back home, right? But they got stuck. And as a result of getting stuck, yes, they bought homes in the UK. But what's the value of homes in the UK versus acres and hectares of land in one of the most fertilely rich places on planet Earth, which is the Caribbean? The Caribbean is a garden. It really is a big, lush garden of healing, in my opinion.
Absolutely right. And it's a place where it's also a very sacred place that we can rightfully claim. I remember some time ago, and I couldn't understand. I used to Brother Farrakhan, where he said, "Oh yes, and we'll create our home right here in Chicago." And I'm thinking, but surely he should be talking about going back to Africa. I didn't quite get it at the time. And my understanding of it now is that, listen, what we have here is what we've created. The powers that be might not want to give us full credit, but you know what? We know what we've created here, what we've done, the work we've put in. So, in the words of Jamaican, I feel it.
And what's important, though, is that we have the potential to establish a stronghold everywhere. We don't have to limit ourselves to an island in the Caribbean or to the UK or to America. We're supposed to have something everywhere. Yes. So providing we have that thought in mind, because your children might not want to come and live in the Caribbean.
Correct.
If you've got, you know, roots in the UK, then they should feel free and they should be able to live comfortably if they choose the UK, if they choose America, even if they choose Finland. No matter where they choose, as long as there's resources, then they can live a quality life there. Very important.
In that regard, I saw an interview with Lennox Lewis where they were saying, but, you know, you're born in England, raised in Canada, and here you are again. You know, he said, listen, I am a citizen of the world.
There you go.
I'm equally at home in England, in Canada, in Africa, wherever I go, I'm at home.
That's right. That's right.
And I thought, wow, what a statement.
So as Sister Francesca, I'm looking at Sister Francesca, drinking up the sunshine. So they're in Jamaica, so they're going to come and see you, brother Errol. And Sister Silvina will ask you, what's next?
Just bought myself a new black magic camera. One of the things I hope to do is to, because I have these ideas for storytelling and so on and so forth. So I hope to get back into doing an independent filmmaker. I say that, but I also know that someone like myself who find myself in this position, and I don't like to talk too much because then, it's either you're doing it or you're talking.
Right.
And I see stuff all the time, but then I also see where we are and also see the work that needs to be done. So sometimes being frivolous I struggle with that because I feel that I should be doing more what I might call important things. So in other words, for example, we use bookings.com, Airbnb. I'm thinking Airbnb, they advertise to everybody. They don't advertise one specific thing. They try and advertise everything. Is there an opportunity there now for a black Airbnb?
Yeah.
Where you go around and you sign up different hotels like myself and then give them the same deal as Airbnb, except that now, when you're advertising now, you have the funds now to advertise the Caribbean as opposed to anywhere else.
Yes.
So there's that.
Do you know, have you ever looked at the business model of Airbnb? When you look at their original business model, when they started off, Errol, they were their original deck is something that your grandchildren can do. It's like, it's something that a 6-year-old would put together at school. I've seen their original deck. And when they were raising funds for their first round of investment, they were only looking for $30,000, I think it was.
Wow.
$30,000. That's what they were looking for. So even though the owners are all billionaires once they went IPO, original investors like SoftBank and others who saw value in it, they became like 70% owners of Airbnb. And these guys, their contribution and their share was so minimal, but because of the value of the stock, they all became billionaires. So again, like the model at the time seemed ludicrous. Rent out a room in your house, So with what you're discussing or proposing, it's a great idea. And if you start with just 100 individuals who are willing, I'm telling you, catch a light.
And then I'm not just doing it. Well, here I am. I also have an entity myself. So I'll be, if you like, customer number one.
Exactly.
Exactly. And then also there's a business of just, okay, so we run a small boutique hotel, 20 rooms. And if I look at the whole process, I can take that process and move to another area, say I'm in the Grill, western part. I can move to the eastern part, place like St. Thomas, where there's some new infrastructure coming in, new roads and so on and so forth. So there's those opportunities there, or indeed move to another Caribbean island. So that business model, that what we've learned from doing this, we can take it and go elsewhere.
Again, well, we're having a good old look at St. Lucia at the moment, Errol, and we'll speak about this. I'll call you tomorrow and we'll have a conversation about it. But every
but even then, there's other opportunities here. For example, what should be man, I'm probably going to get in trouble. So, Brother Hakeem, please just kind of step in if my enthusiasm sort of gets the better of me. Has anyone seen the Usain Bolt's icon where he's like this?
Yes.
We've all seen it.
Yes.
Do you ever see what's written underneath it?
No, I can't say I have.
You know what's written underneath it?
No, tell me.
Puma, his sponsor.
Oh, yes. Yes. Very upsetting.
I would argue.
Yeah.
I would argue that
Yeah.
Usain Bolt, iconically as a sporting icon,
Should have his own brand.
is
Yeah.
as important as a Michael Jordan.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Michael Jordan endorsed,
Yeah.
and then, well, actually, you know what? It's not just then I use your Air. So there's Nike, then they had a brand called a model called Air, and then a special one called Air Jordans.
Correct.
Special edition sold out. So popular, why not just create another one? So then you have Air Jordans for a while. I don't know how long that deal lasts. And then Jordan was like, well, now it's just
I
Jordan.
think he sold the rights out for life for $1 billion.
He still collects roughly about 600 or something like that million a year.
Yeah, but I think he's got a
but the
set
point
price
is,
that he's like
his model
just-
is there. He's
yeah.
not just advertising someone else's shoes.
No, and his mother
He's getting a
does
bigger
of
bite
job.
of the cherry.
Yeah. You see, what happened with Hussein also, if you look at the history of his management was a little white boy from England who didn't have like a whole...
that part of me, I take your point, but that part of me as I don't really look at that too much, because even with black management, you got to be careful.
No. Let me tell you why you should look at it. And I'm not mentioning a little white boy because of his race. I'm mentioning when you're at that kind of level, you cannot have rookies manage you.
Okay.
Like you can't have a try-a-ting manager. You're the fastest man in the world. You're supposed to have the biggest company. Like you're supposed to be looking at who manages David Beckham, who manages Andy Murray, who manages, Tim Henman. So these guys are all going on to be billionaires based upon their management.
Yep.
And the management company that manages all of them guys is pretty much the same. Who manages Cristiano Ronaldo? See, these are the type of people who you want managing you when you're that kind of celebrity. You can't be hanging out with Mr. and Mrs. Try-a-ting. And that's the problem that we sometimes...
That's why here when they're jumping up and down, and like that. So, and this is my thought process now. So imagine if he had a branded trainers that will sell. Then once a year, he would then join up with the local school here called Edna Manley or UTech and say, right, with design department, say, listen, this is only opening to a Jamaican education institution.
See, the problem now is that because he's no longer competing, it's a bit difficult to sell it now. You got to sell those things whilst you're at the top of your game. You got to,
but he can still sell because he still holds a record. He still can still argue, I am.
Oh yeah.
I am the fastest man on the
planet.
And
in truth, a man like him, you should see his face more in the place than we do.
Correct.
He's
not
he's quite
advertising Richard Branson's. Not advertising Richard Branson's cable or the last one I see him advertising Perched.
Yeah. But I tell you, Errol, you know this, and we're gonna have to wind this down, unfortunately, because I'm like the brother in the audience. We could talk about this forever. But one of the things that's very important is when God starts to bless you with resources.
Yes.
There are those who have a limit because they're looking at what they can do for themselves. When you're building for generations, there's never enough. Like you're always trying to, when you start to now become an ambassador for an entire people, that's when you start to strike these humongous deals because you're looking way down the road. And the further you can see down the road is the greater your appetite will be. Okay, so I think with many of our greats, a whole educational process needs to take place because we've got to get beyond the frivolous.
And in that regard, that's the reason why I mentioned Usain Bolt, because I'm saying that if he then, let's say he has the brand is good, then he could leverage and say, well, you know what, I'm prepared to accept 1 point.
Of course he can, but I want to talk about you. I want to talk about you. Forget. Let's put Hussein on the side.
Let me finish this 1 point.
Leave him alone. Leave him alone.
You ask about where I want to be. So I'm
All
saying
right,
he
let
could
me
have
go to you. Left the
one
man
point
alone, left him.
and bring the manufacturing to Jamaica, and then
Oh
that
no.
now would then start now
I tell you
to
this, Errol.
something.
I remember I was coming through, I think it was Michael Manley Airport. And as I'm coming through the airport, I saw this Manley brand. This must have been about 10 years ago. And I was so inspired by the Manley brand. I bought a good couple of things. And recently, maybe I think 2 years ago, we were doing some business with some representatives of the Garvey family. And do you know, up until about maybe 3 years ago, there was no website, marcusgarvey.com. We literally secured that website. I think we owned the domain name, marcusgarvey.com. Is that correct, Sister Sylvina? Yeah, we owned that name.
Wow.
And when we looked at all of the quotes of Marcus Garvey, none can free ourselves. None can free ourselves. What is it? None but ourselves can free our minds. Yeah? Now that's Garvey classic. Do you see that anywhere? That quote was made popular by Bob Marley. But most people don't know that is Garvey's quote.
That's Garvey.
So when you look at these national treasures, like who knows about Marcus Garvey to the degree that he should be known?
Or even who comes to Jamaica to see?
Just last night, Errol, a record came in my mind of the Mighty Diamonds. Them never love poor Marcus. Them never love him, oh no. Him want a brethren, sell him for rice and peas. Now you think about it. That was back in the day, classic Mighty Diamonds singing about a Jamaican.
But even then, when you say his owner brethren, again, a lot of us don't even realize, because ultimately, although he said brethren, one could argue they weren't really brethren. It was just basically tribe selling another tribe.
Right.
We're looking at it from the point of view, all brethren, as in we're all black. But essentially, in those days, there was tribe.
But you look
and that's how they were able to. That's how we were able to divide and conquer.
Right. So let me close on this. Do you intend to franchise the model throughout the Caribbean as a starting point? And is that something you would consider in the future?
It's something I'd consider.
Okay. So we're going to come and visit, and then we're going to find your boardroom, and we're going to have a conversation on franchise. Because if you've got the model, then why do we need to reinvent the wheel?
Reinvent.
Right. So, Sylvina, final question from you, if there is one.
No final questions from me. We spoke about what's next, and that was really what I wanted to hear.
Fantastic. So, Brother Errol, what are you going to leave with our beautiful audience this Thursday evening?
Blessings comes in all shapes, sizes, and forms. One of the biggest blessings we've had is through some lyrics. And it goes like this: emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind.
That's right.
We can free our mind. And when we free our mind, then we can begin to access our great God-given power.
Fantastic. Brother Errol Hewitt, spiritual injection, take your devices off mute and show your love for our great special guest this evening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Shay. Thank you, brother. Very inspirational.
Fantastic.
Powerful.
Fantastic.
Thank you, brother.
Thank
May
you.
Allah bless you.
So we're looking forward to going to Jamaica and, traveling to brothers and viewing and staying with him at his beautiful resort. And, brother shared his story. And the key is that all of you in the audience have a story. And many of our stories are being lost. And us showcasing the journey. So we could have spoken about the hotel all day, but the hotel has a foundation. And that foundation is my brother's life story, his family's life story. Hence the reason why he named the hotel after the ship that brought his father from the Caribbean, from Jamaica to England. That's the name of the hotel, the resort. So therefore, when the scripture speaks about everlasting life, the name of his property has weaved in the history of his family. And you and I, dear brothers and sisters, those of us in the audience, we have a window of opportunity to do something significant in our family's name so that our families and our lineage live long after we physically returned back to the earth. This evening showcased that. And I'm hoping those of you in the audience were inspired by our special guest.
Yes, sir.
Errol Hewitt. Don't see anything in your life as insignificant. Everything you have experienced is significant, and it is a brick, it's a stone, it's a piece of mortar, it's something that is a part of the jigsaw of your life and my life. Providing we are not wasteful, then we don't need to hoard. We just need to put what we have acquired to good use. Doesn't need to be hoarded. Put it to use. And Brother Errol, I'll close with this. I had a neighbor who lived opposite my family in Brixton. They've lived opposite us for over 55 years. And I remember in the riots in '84, one of the neighbors offered me the house for sale for 55,000, I think it was at the time. Nobody wanted the house. Try and sniff it today, it's worth 4 million all day long, all day long. Again, opportunity for someone. Whoever took it is now 4 million to the good, 4 million to the good. Now, another neighbor directly opposite, dear brother, we would say hello to them and they would say hello to us. And the widow of the man who passed said hello to us recently, and she invited us for coffee and whatnot. So me and one of my brothers, we went and had coffee with her 2 weeks ago. And we didn't know that her husband, the weird looking man who we used to see occasionally, he was one of the greatest artists that the UK has produced. And all of his sculptures and artwork is all over the house. So even though he's physically gone, his wife has preserved all of his work. And in every room, there's a sculpture or a piece of art reminiscent of the sacrifice of that man's life. So his home has become like a museum. So there's no selling of that home because it houses the great, contribution that his life's work, brought forth as a gift to this world. And I say the same to all of us. What we have done and what we have collected of significance really tells our story. And we must have a place where we can house our life's work. Other than that, when we pass, it will be sold at auction and it will be as if we were never here. But if there's one person who survives, who loves you, then you can never die, because they will ensure your name is remembered. And just like Brother Errol, just like you made sure that your father's contribution is remembered, it shows that God put love in your heart for your father, so that so even though your father, you mentioned earlier, your father may not have said certain things to you, but his regard for you now that he's physically not there saying it, but now you know and you're uncovering it. You're making his name live. So it's a wonderful show, dear brother. You really, lifted us.
In terms of just to show you legacy, I've just learned. I mean, a cousin of mine, this is the man wearing basically a Muslim prayer hat.
Yeah.
So I said, what is this? I said, that's a serious business. It's not no style thing. You know what he said to me? He said, yeah, I know, I'm a Muslim. So what do you mean by you're Muslim? And sure enough, he does upholstery. Above his shop, the only mosque in Western Jamaica.
Wow. Wow. As they say, you can't make it up.
Only mosque in Western Jamaica. So then, him just saying, Salam alaikum.
Yeah.
I pass by Salam alaikum. His back is turned. He'll say, Cousin Errol. So I said, how do you know it's me? He said, you're the only one who says that to me. But there are Muslims here in Jamaica.
Very good.
There are Muslims. And since then, I've seen, guys travel from Thailand, all over the place, come hear that there's Muslims in Jamaica, and they come to his mosque. You go there, you find a plethora of people.
The man who taught Toussaint Louverture was a man called Bookman, and he was from Jamaica. And they call him Bookman because he used to carry a book. But the book he used to carry was the Holy Quran. You see? So, and he
said that again. When I lived in Kingston, there's a guy across the road. And I'm friends with one of his sons now. The son name is Omar. And I thought, Omar, but then I remember the father used to stand in the veranda.
Yes.
Turns out the father was Minister Farrakhan's man in Jamaica.
Brother Omar. We know him very well.
He'd stand there every Sunday, he'd stand there, had his cap on, and very kind of dignified. Just remember him looking out like this.
The captain.
So that was the first Muslim I ever met in Jamaica.
And he's such a beautiful brother.
Yeah.
And they come from a family of dentistry. A family of dentistry, and they own their own dentist operation right there in Jamaica. Again, brother Errol, we can talk all day and all night.
This time I've used up, so I must.
That was an encore, brothers and sisters. Let's give him another big round of applause. That was the encore.
Thank you. Thank you, brother Errol.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, brother Errol.
Spiritual injection.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to have you.
So with that said, family, we're going to love you and leave you. Tomorrow we're back.
Okay, indeed, man. All right.
Thank you, brother Errol. Thank you.
Okay.
And lots of love. And I'll be in touch with you tomorrow, brother Willie.
Do you enjoy our content? Well, make sure to like, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you won't miss an episode.